Welcome to Disrupt the Drift. I am Baron Baptiste. This is a place where we can tell the truth and the truth can be told. Today, we want to get right into it. We want to talk about the cost of holding back, the cost of holding back in your life, the cost of holding back in your growth, in your spiritual evolution, holding back in mind, body, and what you do out in the world. What holds you back? There's a quote, it's Kobe Bryant, who said, booze, when people are booing you, booze don't hold you. No, booze don't stop dunks. Dunking the ball and into the hoop and being booed are not correlated. But I think it speaks to something, because when you have a lot going on, when you have a lot going for you in life, people will boo you. They'll tear you down, especially in any moments of weakness or vulnerability. David, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'll start with a provocative quote. And this is from a gentleman named B.R. Ambedkar. He says, unlike a drop of water which loses its identity when it joins the ocean, man does not lose his being in the society in which he lives. Man's life is independent. He is born not for the development of the society alone, but for the development of himself. And I think that what happens is that we have a feeling as we are children, and we were talking about this earlier, that we are nothing more than reflections of our environment, that we must be in some way, shape, or form. So no matter what culture you're born into, you feel that you have to fit in, otherwise you stand out. And standing out in a lot of circumstances is not a great thing, especially when you're in a society which very much values conformity. And so today, it's a little different than it was when you and I were kids, I'm sure, because now we have these mothers who ask their children if they want to be a boy or girl today. That's crazy wackadoodle stuff. But that's the ultimate far end of the spectrum of self-expression, which to me is psychotic derangement. But at the same time, there are children who are absolutely oppressed. And we see this more often in cult-like environments. It could be people who come from very strictly religious backgrounds. And so the question is, how do you become yourself, and how do you not hold back when holding back is more expected of you than actually being the person that you came into this world to be? But then the other question is, how do you become that person between these two extremes of going all the way to the wackadoodle side of things and being oppressed all the way to the dark side?
Yeah. When we speak about holding back, I want to point to, it's something within us. It's something in our state of mind, our state of being. There's something in the realm of fear, resentment, or in the default reality for human beings of being the victim. And then from within ourselves, from right here, we then do certain things in the world, or we don't do certain things. We fundamentally have a deep fear about what people think of us. That's why I like this quote from Kobe Bryant, booze don't stop dunks, because dunks, getting the ball into the hoop, has to do with doing your own thing, having your own aim, having your own focus, being true to what you do and what you are up to, and true to who you want to be and who you want to become, which is different than when you are in a reaction to the booze, the people that are throwing stones your way. Because when you're doing good work in the world, when you're putting yourself out, people will come for you. And it's often learned young, David. Like, it's something that I remember in my own life, like going to school I think it was third grade. I had a teacher who was very good at humiliating. She would humiliate me. She would humiliate other students in class. I remember my parents took me on a trip. I think we went to India or something for 3 weeks. We were learning in school that we were learning the alphabet. I think when I started to go the trip to India with my parents, the class was right at ABCD kind of thing. Then I leave for 3 weeks, come back, and the class had moved way along in the alphabet. And the first day back for me in class, the teacher called me up and to the front of the room to the chalkboards and asked me to write all the way up A, B, C. I don't remember if it was up to Q or P or somewhere up there in the alphabet, but I didn't know the answer. And I don't remember what she said, but I remember she said something and the whole class laughed at me. And I realized in that moment, in front of groups, in front of a room, be careful what you say because it's dangerous. You could get embarrassed, you could get judged, you could get humiliated. And that can stick with you. That's something I had to work through in my life. I had to see that something in me was holding me back. I would see people speaking freely. Your father, David, I remember when I worked for him as an engineer in his radio show, every morning your dad would be at the mic and you'd be speaking so freely. And I was like, I'd be so inspired by that. I was like, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. But I would see, and then I'd see him speak in front of groups of people or other speakers on stages that were inspiring. But I had some kind of deep fear. I didn't know what it was, but something was holding me back from that inspiration that I had to do those kind of things. And I had to sort through that. I had to learn something. And I'll tell you what I learned as I did start putting myself out more and putting my voice out. It was like, yeah, people may judge you, but in the beginning, you're not very good at things. I used to have a saying at my trainings that if you want to show up and shine, you have to first show up and suck. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because you're not going to be very good. So you give people more ammunition to judge you. Even just doing this podcast, when we started it, what was it, a year and some months back? It was just feeling it out, putting the voice out. And I think we've progressed along. We've come a long way. I know I have, just in the last year of just doing this consistently. But this is something I've learned too. I just want to back up a little bit. Something I learned as I became more of a teacher and public kind of figure in my world, like teaching yoga and leadership and stuff, is that, how can I say this? In order to be someone, we need someone to be someone for. And I'm speaking to this as a trap because if you want to be someone, that in itself becomes a trap because you're not being yourself. If you want to be someone, then you need to be someone for. So you become outformed. You hear marketer people always talking about, what do people want to hear? What sells? What's the messaging that people need? Or like in politics, they're always polling. And then they form their messaging. They become someone based on what others want, rather than standing in principle, standing in truth, standing in an authenticity that goes against the grain. It may land for people or not, but as soon as you become someone that needs to be someone, and you need to be someone for others, that's a trap. Does that make sense? It sounds a little complicated as coming out of my mouth, but I think you get the gist of it. You're being outformed. And then, but fundamentally, the problem with that is you're forming into someone that you're not in order to win the love and likability of an audience, or it could be just friends or in your social circles, or we become someone or not. Our personalities develop as a role we perform for other people, and fulfilling the expectations we think that they have for us. and we become someone that we're actually not. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
it
Like,
does.
yeah.
And I just found this quote from Wayne Dyer, one of my favorites. He says, "The ego is only an illusion, but a very influential one. Letting the ego illusion become your identity can prevent you from knowing your true self. Ego, the false idea of believing that you are what you have or what you do, is a backwards way of assessing and living life. And because we come into the world and everything we see is based on comparisons, and I was the oldest of five kids, and so the kids below me were all vying for attention from mom and dad, and more my dad. But one of my brothers, the third oldest in the family, was very knowledge based. And he would come home and we would talk about the good grades that he got and what he learned that day. And he would brag about it. And I remember my dad saying to me, and I think I'm 4 years older than him. So why don't you be more like your brother? And this is my dad that said this about my brother. And so is how do you follow that? How do you not be yourself and be more like somebody else so that the other person who said so would be happier with you? That's a completely
And the
upside
person that
down
you want
thing.
approval from. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it
That's
never
typical in families, right?
totally
You
typical.
want the
So
approval of a parent, and right there you become someone you
yeah,
are not.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it just never worked for me. And thank God it didn't, because to compromise, and I think somebody said, a quote is, there are no solutions, there's only trade-offs.
Yeah.
But
Thomas
there's
Sowell. Yeah.
Thomas Sowell. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so that can mean one of two things. The trade-off could be you give up something you shouldn't do or have for something you should, or vice versa.
Mm.
There's no
For who you
solution,
should be, you
right?
give up. That's the solution to be
Right.
someone you're not.
Yeah.
But the trade off is giving up the approval of others
Right.
and you're trading that off to become the self, your true
Well,
self.
it works
Yeah.
both ways, because you can't have both. You
Yeah.
can't be
No, you
both. You
can't.
can't be an authentic version of yourself and still try to get a love and approval by accepting pressure and expectations from other people. It just doesn't work,
Yeah.
because what? You're selling out on yourself. You've helped me with that one, right?
Yeah.
You sell out on yourself. And when you sell out on yourself, you're looking at yourself and seeing the loser in you. You're seeing it.
Yeah.
And you're afraid that other people will see it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned that about people. People sell out on themselves so quick for if you look at social influencers, to get views, to get likes, they'll do things that are crude and absurd, or they become this personality that, again, that is appeasing an audience, but they move far away from who they are, and it doesn't ring true. Here's a quote I really like from the American he was a sociologist, Charles Cooley. I think this is pretty deep, brilliant. He said, "I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. I have thoughts about who you think I am that gives me my sense of self, but it's completely outward based. It's a self based on who I think I am is based on who I think you think I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Now
that
look,
becomes a persona.
right. See, here's the
Oh,
thing
wait.
that,
And real quick, the word persona comes from the Latin root, which means mask.
mm, so one of the things that I discovered pretty early in life was, and because I was the subject and the object of comparison to all the other kids in my family, I was the oldest of five. And I realized that when I didn't know something, that was a safe place for me to be. because I wasn't about trying to know everything. Like my brother was a know-it-all and my sister was a know-it-all. And my other brothers, they were too young, so I didn't really care what they thought. But when I got to that place where I realized that it was okay that I didn't know, I realized something else, and that is that not knowing is a form of knowing. It's a different way of knowing something. And it's not necessarily something that you actually know, like the know-it-alls do, the experts, the people that always come with some kind of a, I've got the answer to that, I've got the solution to
Yeah,
that.
take my answer and live my answer, but then you're living someone else's answer,
That's
not your own
true.
answers.
And
Yeah,
I
your own
realized
learning and discovery.
I couldn't compete with the know-it-alls because I wasn't about the knowing of all these things that really didn't matter to me. But when I got to that point, that was liberating to say and truly accept I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, if was I
Yeah.
interested?
That's
Maybe I
another
was
thing.
interested, but maybe I wasn't.
Most people can't say I don't know. That's another common default for human beings is to pretend they know when they don't. I learned that early on when I would hire new employees, and certain people they'd always have an answer, but then it would prove to be not true. The answer, not, you pull the curtain open and it's not factual, but they
Mm,
immediately have to cough up an answer like they know. They
right.
pretend like they know what they're doing, but they don't. Like it's totally inauthentic. It's a pretense, it's a mask, but it's a cover up for some deeper insecurity, some deeper being found out that it's an ego thing, right? But they may be found out that they're fraudulent, or they may be found out that they're stupid. Maybe they've got some deep, dark story about themselves that they're not even aware of that's driving them, but they go around pretending like they know. And the truth is, what you just pointed to, it takes a level of humility to give up your nets in the way. That's something I've, from working with thousands of people in my trainings, that's something I learned, that the one thing that fundamentally will stop people is the need to know. Like they need to know. Give me the answer. They need to know because they live from their knowing, their
Mm-hmm.
knowingness.
Yeah.
So but that gets in the way of one's ability to really grow and open up and transform who they've been to who they want to be. The need to know, but there's a lot of power in saying just those words. I don't know. There's a lot of there's a whole world opens up in I don't know. And when you really don't know, you begin to know on a deeper level.
Let's look at the word know, the greatest teacher that ever lived. Know the truth, and it shall make you free. Now, if you understand the meaning of the word know, the Latin, if I'm not mistaken, or the Greek root of the word know means to be intimate with. In other words, when a man marries a woman, he knows his wife, right? He is intimate with his wife. So if you have a situation that's presented to you and you draw a blank and you just say, I don't have an answer, I don't know, it's because you're being actually honest about the content of what you have about something. If you say I don't know, but if you then start to look for the truth and to know the truth about any given thing, it doesn't matter what it is, because truth is core, it's essential, it's elemental. If you want to know the truth about anything, that is the basis of an authentic knowing. But if you don't have any truth about something, then how can you know about it? You can have linear knowledge. You can have knowledge, which is not the same as knowing, by the way. And a lot of people substitute knowledge for knowing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But knowing is a condition that you find yourself in with a closeness to whatever it is, a topic. When somebody really knows their topic, when somebody knows their subject, when somebody knows an actual bit of information that makes sense, you know it too. And so this is a different kind of knowing that comes into existence as it is revealed to you, whether it's revealed to you from inwardly through intuitive knowing or through an external source. Because listen, I'm scanning the world like a police scanner, listening, watching. I want to know what's going on in my world, but I want to know it from an authentic source. I just don't want to have pablum and fake news and false information thrown at me, and then I don't want the wax fruit side of that because it looks good, because it sounds good, because it makes you feel good. It doesn't mean you actually got anything.
Makes you feel smarter, makes you feel like you're in with the cool crowd, or you're going along with the grain, going along to get along. It speaks to, and I'll tell you, our podcast here, like these conversations we have, we're talking about something deeper for human beings. We're not talking about the tactical or the how-to. We're talking about your way of being with life. Because you can change what you're doing, but that doesn't change your way of being. And your way of being fundamentally is the space you are in the world. And in that space, there are attractions. What are you attracting, and what kind of people are you attracting in your life? What kind of situations, what kind of dramas, what kind of possibility, what you're attracting in life. But your way of being, when you have a fundamental shift in your being in life and with life, it changes what you do. Maybe you're doing the same things, but you're a wholly different space. You're flowing and coming from a wholly different place and space within yourself.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in business. People that run businesses, or I work with entrepreneurs, or being an entrepreneur and running an organization, I would see that you could change what people do, I'm talking about at a group and organizational level, you could change what people do. You could put in new systems, new protocol, new policy. You could change what people do, but that doesn't change their way of being. And the way of being is a culture, you could say, in a company. It becomes the culture. And the culture gives, there are a lot of different cultures, right? We've all been in cultures that are negative, dark, gossipy, and maybe you're doing the same things, but energetically, there's a loss of power. There's a loss of freedom. There's a loss of self-expression. What you have is suppression. You feel contained, constrained, like that. But if you bring it to an individual, when you shift the fundamental place, the location in which you exist, yourself exists in the world, when you have a shift in the location of your being from just a human doing to a beingness, you have it's a whole different world to operate from. There's space, there's freedom, there's choice of actions to take or not take, people to have in your life or not have in your life. You get the gist of that? That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because each attitude that we acquire from either internal observation, in other words, through our own scientific inquiry and the asking of questions and the sincere search for meaning from your own sense of what's right and wrong, as opposed to allowing other people to tell you what's right and wrong and for you to accept that, which is what happens when we're children. And Eckhart Tolle said this: in the egoic state, your sense of yourself, your identity, is derived from your thinking mind. In other words, what your mind tells you about yourself, the storyline of you, the memories, the expectations, all the thoughts that go through your head continuously, and the emotions that reflect those thoughts, all those things make up your sense of self. But these are all things that are very highly subjective, because what happens is, as we become more mature, and just reflecting on this myself, I know when I was 12, 13 years old, I was influenced by a peer group, and I found myself walking and dressing and saying many of the same cliche things that all my friends said and acting a certain way to fit into the group. But it never felt authentic to me, not even when I was 10, 12, 11, 13, 14 years old. And I became aware that I was not being myself, that I was actually reflecting them so that they would feel more comfortable with me and that they wouldn't notice anything different about me. I didn't want to be noticed. I want to be
Yeah.
left alone.
Yeah.
And then but see, there was a growing sense of discontentment within myself about me trying to fit in, trying to be like other people. It
Well,
never
and
did
then
work for me.
there was the trade-off, right? There's no
There's the trade-off.
solution to that situation. You can stay in that same kind of group and come up with solutions to be whatever, yourself, to fit in better, whatever solutions, it's still inside of that world, that context, you could
Mm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a trade-off, right? You had to give up. You had to give up those kids or that part of yourself that was feeding off those kids. At a certain point, you had to trade. There was a trade-off. To be true to yourself, you had to give something up, but it was a trade-off. We're not talking about solutions either in this podcast. We're talking about, it's a trade-off in life. You want a new life. You want to become someone, a new man, a new woman, beyond who you've been. There's a trade-off.
So let me tell you what I did.
And it comes out, you've got to give things up. You've got to let things go.
What I did is I started to embrace the rejection. And in a way, what happens is that it's like the saying, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And so I started to find a sense of identity in embracing not being like other people. In other words, I knew I was going to get rejected. I knew I was going to get put down. I knew I was going to get mocked and made fun of. But at the same time, and I've talked about this quite a bit, that if either you are the effect of a cause or you are the cause of an effect. And I think this is where this becomes really meaningful, because if you are the effect of a cause, then you're an outside in person and the environment is shaping you and molding you. And that can go on for an entire lifetime. But when you stop allowing yourself to be the effect of an external cause, whatever it may be, and you actually become a reflection of your own self, you become a wall in which balls bounce off of. And suddenly, instead of you absorbing everything that everybody's throwing at you and internalizing it, it stops becoming an effect on you. And then you start to become an effect backward on those who are hurling things at you. And after several years of me embracing the rejection and embracing.
Are you the influenced or the influencer? That's
After
leadership
a while,
too. Yeah.
People started reflecting me. So the way I was dressing, I started wearing army pants and work boots and hoodies. When I was 16, 17 years old, I started my own fashion trend because I thought I shopped in thrift stores and I picked up some really weird, cool clothes.
Yeah, thrift stores became a thing when I was a teenager. That's where we hung out.
Cowboy shirts and
thrift shops.
I just had my own style that I said, this is me. I'm going to be me. And then all of these people that expected me to reflect them, slowly but surely, they started noticing that it was cool to be your own person, and they started following me. And this is Solomon Asch did these experiments with people, and you have to look at the Solomon Asch experiments, the conformity experiments, because if they had a group of people, they had 6 people, and they paid 5 of them to give wrong answers, and only one person would give the right answer. After a while, that person felt that they started to doubt themselves and thinking that the rest of the people were right and that they were wrong. And so what it really took was only 2 people to reinforce each other in giving the right answer in the Solomon Asch experiments, in order for those people then to start an opposite domino effect. You can be the effect of a positive cause if you don't let them get to you and get under your skin and make you doubt that you have a right to be the person that you're meant to be. In a nutshell, right there.
Yeah. No, really good. I think this is a good place to wrap up. Last thought. I have a quote here by Carl Jung, and because I think it speaks to also the way out. the way out of being a people pleaser and finding yourself. But he says, Carl Jung says, the spirit of evil is the negation of the life force. And he goes on to say, only boldness can deliver us from fear. And if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated. So it takes boldness. It takes courage. It takes something to go against the grain. It takes something to stick your neck out, to wear yourself on your sleeve and be at issue with the status quo, to disrupt the drift,
that's so deep.
Disrupt business as usual. When you start being true, you are going to, disrupt, and then there will be backlash. But remember that boos don't stop dunks. You do you, you be about you and what's true, and you keep truing up and aiming true. And a whole new life gets revealed to you.
On that
me.
note, my new book just came out, Superconscious Mind. This book is packed full of really deep comparisons between science and supernatural. And if you're a person who loves science to validate supernatural, this is your book right here. And you can find it at my website, escapeyourmindsprison.com.
All right, awesome. Yeah, check me out at baronbaptiste.com. Also, if you want us to respond to a question you have or send your comments, anything, to email it to disruptingthedrift@baronbaptiste.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on an audio podcast platform, give us a 5-star review. It helps us keep sharing the show. We grow through you sharing the show, and the show's been consistently growing. No marketing, no sales here, and we have been growing consistently. I'll have to start pulling some of those numbers out, because it's pretty impressive what you all listening, you listeners, your sharing of the show has really created an organic, natural growth. So appreciate that. Appreciate you. All right. Until next time, keep bold and keep true, and keep disrupting the drift within you and without you. All right. Peace be with you.